So sad news to share tonight. Memphis music great Steve Cropper has died. As a guitarist at Stax Records, he helped write some of the biggest songs of all time, including Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, In the Midnight Hour, and Green Onions.
At 5:25 this morning, sad note to pass along from the world of music. Steve Cropper has passed away. The legendary musician wrote the song Sitting on the Dock of the Bay. He was a big name in the Memphis soul music world.
Steve Cropper's funeral wasn't meant to be dramatic. It was supposed to be a quiet farewell to a man who spent his life behind the music, letting his guitar speak for him. But the moment his family stepped forward, the entire chapel went cold. Musicians fell silent. Fans leaned in, unsure what they were about to hear. His children didn't offer polished speeches. They spoke with raw honesty, revealing private moments Steve never shared, the regrets he carried, the fears he hid, the love he protected. Then his wife stepped up, her voice trembling, and delivered a truth so powerful that even industry giants wiped their eyes. Steve shaped the soundtrack of America, but in death, his family revealed the man behind the legend, the heartbreak he endured, the quiet battles he fought, and the legacy he protected until the end. Inside that Nashville chapel, one message rose above the grief, a message that changed everything, and what happened next stunned everyone. The Nashville chapel carried a weight the moment people stepped inside. Steve Cropper wasn't just another musician being honored. He was the quiet force behind songs that shaped generations, and everyone felt the gravity of losing him. Rows filled with guitar legends, producers, old friends, and fans who drove in from hours away. Some held flowers, others held vinyl, but most just stood still, waiting for someone to break the heavy silence. Even the air felt tense, like the room understood something powerful was coming. When Steve's coffin was placed at the front, the mood shifted again. People expected simple, respectful goodbyes, a calm tribute to a man who rarely sought attention. Nothing more, nothing dramatic. But that idea vanished the moment his family stepped forward. What they were about to reveal would leave the entire chapel stunned. And this was only the beginning. Stephen walked to the front first, gripping the podium like he needed it to stay upright. He didn't look like the son of a legend. He looked like a man holding back years of emotion. His voice cracked as he described a childhood shaped by late-night sessions, constant touring, and the studio always calling. He shared memories of falling asleep on his father's shoulder, while Steve tuned guitars in dim garage light. Quiet moments fans never saw. Moments that showed a father trying to balance fame with family. Even when the road demanded more than he could give, Ashley followed, her voice soft but steady. She spoke about the gentle version of Steve, the notes on the fridge, the missed events he tried to make up for, the guilt he carried for every time he wasn't home. She recalled a late-night talk where Steve admitted he feared letting his family down more than letting the industry down. By the time they stepped away, even veteran musicians were wiping their eyes. But the woman who rose next delivered the moment no one expected. Angel, Steve's wife, never sought attention. Even at the funeral of a legend, she seemed to want to disappear into the crowd. But when she stepped forward, her voice carried a strength that froze the room. She spoke about Steve's final years, the pain he hid, the slow mornings, the frustration of aging after a life built on sound. She described the fall that changed everything, a moment she replayed every night, wondering if she could have stopped it. Her honesty shook those who only knew Steve through his achievements. Then came the confession no one saw coming. Steve had told her, months before passing, that he feared being forgotten, not as a guitarist, but as a father and husband who tried his best when the world demanded more than he had left. Her words hit hard. Legends rarely show vulnerability, and Steve carried his quietly for decades. Angel revealed a truth he never wanted to burden the world with, and it made him feel more human than any record ever could. But her tribute wasn't the final shock. Something deeper was still waiting. The chapel fell silent as Angel stepped aside and Stephen returned with a small envelope. He explained that Steve had written it years earlier, a confession he never spoke aloud. The room tightened as Stephen unfolded the note, his hands shaking. Inside, Steve admitted the weight he carried after losing Otis Redding. Their bond, their plans, their sessions, all shattered in a moment Steve never recovered from. He blamed himself for not being there, for not sensing danger, for losing someone who felt like a brother. The audience reacted in disbelief. Dock of the Bay had always been seen as a masterpiece, but few understood the grief behind every note Steve finished. Hearing his pain shared by his family struck something something raw. The letter went further. Steve confessed that the collapse of Stax left scars he hid. Fear, pressure, and the feeling of losing everything he helped build. Burdens he carried alone. As Stephen finished, the chapel sat frozen. This was no longer a tribute. It was a revelation. A truth buried for decades finally brought into the light. And the moment that followed would shake the room even more. As Steve's letter settled over the chapel, musicians who once shared stages with him stepped forward, many barely holding themselves together. These weren't rehearsed speeches. They were raw stories, pulled straight from the heart. A producer recalled nights when Steve stayed after sessions just to help a younger artist find the right chord. Another musician shared how Steve quietly paid studio fees for struggling players, never asking for credit. One MG's member told a memory that broke the room. Steve once canceled an entire tour stop because a young guitarist backstage had a panic attack. Instead of walking away, Steve sat with him for hours until he calmed down. No one knew that story until now. Every tribute painted the same picture. A man whose kindness stretched far beyond his fame. And with each truth revealed, the chapel felt heavier. But the emotional peak wasn't a speech. It was a sound. When a guitarist stepped toward the stage with Steve's old Telecaster, the room froze. Then Stephen joined him, placing his hand on the neck of his father's guitar. Without a word, they began the opening notes of Dock of the Bay. The chapel fell completely silent except for the familiar aching melody drifting into the rafters. Halfway through, more musicians joined, softly, respectfully, as if answering a call only they could hear. Some fans wept openly. Others held their breath. It wasn't a performance. It was a farewell written in sound, the kind Steve would have understood better than any eulogy. By the time the final chord faded, even the strongest faces had broken. But the moment that followed would hit even harder. After the music faded, Stephen revealed one final message. A separate note Steve left sealed in his guitar case. It wasn't long, but its impact was immediate. In it, Steve apologized for the moments he missed, thanked each child by name, and wrote that his greatest success wasn't a record. It was his family still standing together. He ended the letter with a request. Keep the harmony going. Don't let the world turn you against each other. Those words stunned the room. It was clear Steve wasn't just thinking about the past. He was trying to protect their future. As the family held each other at the podium, the chapel understood something deeper. This wasn't just a goodbye. It was a message Steve wanted the world to hear only after he was gone. When the family gathered themselves, Angel stepped forward once more, holding something Steve never wanted public during his life. A folder of handwritten notes, receipts, and letters that revealed the side of him the world rarely saw. Steve had spent decades helping young musicians in silence. He paid for instruments, covered studio time, and funded scholarships for kids who couldn't afford music lessons. Ashley revealed that Steve never once wanted recognition for any of it. He believed real giving was done quietly, with no spotlight. The chapel listened as she shared how her dad sometimes slipped cash into the pockets of struggling players or invited nervous teenagers into the studio to teach them the basics of rhythm. These weren't isolated moments. They were part of Steve's everyday life. Then Stephen added something that stunned even longtime friends. During the final months of his life, Steve donated a portion of his royalties to youth programs in Memphis and Nashville, asking that his name be removed from all documentation. He wanted the music to live on, not his ego. With every story, the room realized Steve's biggest legacy wasn't a hit record or a gold plaque. It was the lives he changed without anyone noticing. And the moment he was carried out of the chapel would prove just how deeply he was loved. As the doors opened and pallbearers lifted Steve's coffin, the entire chapel rose to their feet. But what happened next, no one expected. Outside, fans lining the walkway began softly humming the opening notes of Green Onions. It spread instantly, a quiet chorus moving through the cold Nashville air. Stephen and Ashley stepped behind the coffin, tears streaming as they heard the sound their father created echo back at him one last time. Musicians in the crowd joined in, some placing their hands over their hearts, others raising their guitars toward the sky. Angel held onto her children tightly, her face buried against Stephen's shoulder as waves of memory washed over her. Even people who had never met Steve felt the weight of the moment. Nashville didn't just say goodbye. It honored a man who shaped the soul of American music without ever demanding recognition. And in that unified hum, the family understood something powerful. Steve hadn't been forgotten. He never would be. But the final words of the service would seal that truth forever. When the crowd quieted, Stephen stepped forward for the last time. His voice was steady now, stronger than it had been all day. He thanked everyone for loving his his father, not just for the music he made, but for the man he tried his best to be. He repeated Steve's final request to keep the harmony going and asked the room to carry that message into their own lives. Angel placed her hand on the coffin and whispered a goodbye. The family chose not to repeat aloud. A private message meant only for Steve. The moment was simple, but it carried more weight than any speech. As the chapel emptied and the last note from the humming crowd faded, one truth settled over everyone there. Steve Cropper didn't need spotlights or applause to leave a legacy. His music healed people. His kindness shaped lives. And his final message reminded the world of what mattered most: love, unity, and the quiet power of giving without asking for anything back. Legends don't fade, they echo, and Steve's echo will play on forever.